Okay, now I want to show you how to fit a large quilt into your sewing machine and what you need to do to prepare it to get into the sewing machine. This is a rather large quilt, although I've done ones on my regular machine that are much larger than this, so this is not daunting to me at all. And it's something that should not scare you any at all. These are what they call quilter's clips, and actually they're derived from what they used to put around their ankles to ride bicycles. So they started out as bicycle clips, but we've adopted them and now they're quilter's clips. And as you can see, I've bought these at different times throughout my quilting career, and this one's round and these are a little bit more oval, and this one even has some rubber tipping on it. They all work the same. I really have no preference. I've seen some that are plastic and they're a little bit smaller, which would work better for smaller quilts if you still wanted to roll those. But these just help you control the rolling of the quilt as you're working on it on the machine. So what you need to do is just very simply roll your quilt top from one edge to the other. And this is, this I typically do on the floor so the whole entire quilt is flat. And so it's just one of those things. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be held together so that you can put these nice little clips on here to hold these rolls. And I put 4 or 5 across something this size. If I had a quilt, and I've done many quilts that are much larger than this, I've asked a family member or a friend to come and be another set of hands on the roll. You can roll it much tighter if you have more than one set of hands helping you. So that does make a big difference. When you're doing it by yourself, it's kind of a little bit more puffy than it might be if you had some help. But either way works. Sometimes you're not always capable of having somebody help you. So you want to roll it within, give yourself about 12 inches to work in the center of the quilt. And I've already rolled this size, so you can see that I've got 2 rolls here. And now I'm going to show you how to get this into your sewing machine. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about how I set up my workspace to deal with these really large quilts. And it is doable, but there are a couple things that really will help you out. And one thing is to have your sewing machine in a sewing cabinet. If you have a cabinet that does not have a leaf on the front, you can add a table out there that's a similar height to your sewing cabinet. That will give you some added space on the front of your cabinet. And then I like to have a table or an ironing board lowered to the height of my cabinet on my left-hand side to deal with the rest of the quilt that comes out from the extra bulk that comes out from the sewing machine. And those 2 things really make a huge difference. Now here's the quilt that we rolled, and I want to show you what I do to get this actual quilt into the machine to get it to where it's doable. I put one of the rolls into the throat of the machine. And as you can see, this is a machine that has a normal size throat on it that's not anything bigger than normal. And I have done many, many quilts on something exactly like this. And so and the other thing I need to stress is that if you do a good job basting, you do not need to worry about where you start on the quilt. It's not, hand quilters typically like to start in the center of the quilt and work out. Machine quilters, it doesn't matter because our pins have replaced any stitching that we're going to put in there. So the pins are stitching until the stitching gets there. So it's all the same thing. You can start anywhere you want on the quilt. And if you want to start somewhere other than the center, then you might need to roll it just a little bit differently. But right now we're going to act like we want to start stitching in the center of this quilt, which is actually how I would probably approach this quilt. And then, so this roll with my quilter's clips on it is in the right-hand side of my machine. So I would stitch as much as I can in this part, and if I needed to do ditch quilting before I did my decorative quilting, I would probably have to re-roll this several times. That doesn't stop me, I'm still doing it. And so something like this, you just keep working at it and working at it up and down as much as you can quilt, and you want to unroll this roll that's in the right-hand side of the machine. You want this roll to get smaller. These clips slide up and down as you need them to slide so that they're not in the way of your arm as you're stitching. Now, with all of this bulk, this back here can really become a problem. You can throw it over your shoulder, you can lay it on the table, whatever it takes so that you have good control of the quilt. Now, sometimes that extra bulk, there's more weight to pull underneath the needle, and if you need to make a handle to get that pulled, then that's fine too. Whatever it takes to get it done. A lot of times gloves or a little bit of hand lotion at this point is probably really helpful. If the front of the quilt, the part that's at the top, if that gets to be hanging over the front of your cabinet, that's an issue, and that will cause you to be stopped dead in your quilting process. So I just usually kind of make an informal roll and kind of roll it on itself so that all of it is on top of the table. That's probably the most important part. So as I'm going, this roll in the machine is getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it's small enough that I can quilt the rest without rolling it. Then I pull the whole thing out of the machine and I turn it around, and this roll goes into the machine, and then I'm stitching from that side over until the same thing happens. The roll is small enough that I can quilt the rest without rolling it. Now, if your quilt is on, the blocks are on the diagonal, you might have to roll it so that it's on the diagonal. You may have to re-roll it several times to finish the entire quilt, but this really works.